Is European Dictators and the Second World War. And Alana has already identified several of the European dictators during the Second World War that she would like to talk about. And so, Alana, let's get right into this whole issue of European dictators by talking about some of the three dictators that you've already mentioned, and give us some information in reference to that, and then we'll build up on the information. And by the time we get into the third segment, we'll have quite a bit of information in reference to them. Go on, give us that kind of information.
Adolf Hitler. What do you think of when you hear Adolf Hitler?
Well, I think of the Holocaust. I think of the World War II. I think of just a number of things. I think of brutality. But what do you think of, and why don't you talk about Adolf Hitler?
When I hear Adolf Hitler, I think of Anne Frank, her diary, the struggles that Jewish people had to go through, the pain that they suffered, the concentration camps that they were found in later after the Holocaust had ended. And now, Adolf Hitler, when you have to expand on this basically, you can't just say, oh yeah, he made the Holocaust, blah, 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 blah. It was so much more than that, so much more than that. I mean, he killed many people. He took lives that didn't belong to him. And I mean, and he just took lives and took lives. If you did something, if you did the slightest thing that he did not like, you were gone. And so that's what I think of when I hear Adolf Hitler. Now let's expand more on who Adolf Hitler was and why he is such an important part of this show today. Adolf Hitler was the Chancellor of Germany. He was born in Austria and died in Germany when he was assassinated. Now, he was an aggressive person growing up. He always was, and he grew up to be. He was the leader of the Nazi Party. What do you think of when you hear Nazi, the word Nazi?
I think of Adolf Hitler again, and the leader of the party. Go on and speak to it.
Now, Nazis were a group of people who basically thought that they were better than everybody else. Like, if I happened to walk down the street and I walked across a Nazi, I would get sneered at. I would probably get pushed or teased or laughed at because of the color of my skin, because I was African American. But luckily, I've never crossed over a Nazi. And now, the Nazi Party is still, I don't really want to say alive, but still, they're not, they're active, but they don't cause riots or anything, I believe. They're a party who think they are in a higher class of everybody else. Like, there's low class, middle class, higher class, and then there's them. That's what goes on in their head, and they think that God sent them on the world to be better, basically, that they're supposed to be better, and they're supposed to mistreat people who aren't like them or who aren't them. And so that's what you think of when you hear the Nazi Party. But now let's focus on Adolf Hitler. Now, this man who was famous for the Holocaust, most people think that his actions, his aggressive foreign policy, is what caused the Second World War. He thought that he was so much better, and that when he caused all this ruckus, that's what people think of when they think that he started the Second World War. And do you think that's true? Or?
He did. He actually started the Second World War in 1939.
In 1939.
By the invasion of Poland. Go on.
Exactly. And so he liked to see this. He liked to see him having power over something or somebody. I mean, because if he didn't have power, then he would be mad, and then he would assign somebody to be killed for his own personal pleasure. But I just can't see how someone would enjoy seeing millions and millions and millions of innocent people. I mean, these people weren't criminals. These people never did anything to you. They were innocent people that got killed for what they believe in, what they look like, their orientation, what they were. If they weren't Adolf Hitler, if they weren't part of the Hitler family, then there were apparently nothing to do.
Why don't you give us some examples of some of the killing and some of the tragedies that Hitler caused the Jewish people? Anne Frank, for example. Something.
Yes, the most famous death that happened in the Holocaust was Miss Anne Frank. She had a diary, and she kept all of her experiences about the Holocaust in that diary. And when she had passed away, her father found the diary, and he planned to be able to, and he made sure that that book was published and that everybody got to see how horrible the Holocaust was. And that's what he did. It's been published in almost all languages. It's so many languages like German or English. And so, yeah. And so that's how important Anne Frank was to the Holocaust. And and she's basically the most, she's what people think of when you hear Holocaust. You think, you immediately think of the Diary of Anne Frank. You just right on the spot. And she was so much more than that. She wasn't just an author. I mean, she didn't even plan to be an author. She was just a regular girl who kept a diary.
Very good. And so in a real sense, you've identified Adolf Hitler as perhaps one of these dictators, and I think you've indicated that a dictator is a person that controls the government, the political government,
the ruler of
everything, and et cetera. And now, what do you think over the last 2 minutes that we have during this segment? What do you think that were some of the most destructive things that dictators did outside of actually killing people?
I think that was the worst thing that they did. I mean, they killed people, they ruined families, they separated families. They did so much to these people, to innocent people that didn't deserve this. And they were killed because of what they believed in.
Well, if you looked at these dictators, how would you classify them in terms of how they suppress folks' freedom and their citizenship and perhaps their right to vote? Did they control that aspect of the lives of
Yes, they took away every right that the people in that country had. They took away the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, the right to vote, the right to citizenship, and the right to be able to be a citizen.
To be free.
To be free, right.
And in a real sense. And so in a real sense, these dictators that you've identified in Europe during the period of the Second World War, you've identified Adolf Hitler as perhaps one of the leaders in a real sense because of the...
but he is nothing compared to Stalin and Mussolini.
So, and that's what we're doing. We'll get ready doing this next segment. We'll come back and we'll talk about the other two dictators that you've identified, Joseph Stalin and Mussolini. And then that will give us, during this last segment, an opportunity to pull all of this together and come up with some general statements in reference to dictators, European dictators during this particular time. Because I think that that's essentially what we're trying to get at, that while this happened a long time ago, that the idea of freedom, the idea of citizenship, and the idea of voting is still very, very vital. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she has given us some information concerning European dictators during the Second World War. And now she will continue her discussion in reference to